Welcome to the Radiant Visalia podcast. Join us at one of our two services, 8:30 and 10:30 a.m. Download the Church Center app or visit our website, radiantvisalia.com, to stay connected with us. All right, enjoy.
There is a heavenly city that I'm compelled to find.
Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. Brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we count as blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. You may be seated.
Thanks, Micah. My name's Glenn. I work here at Radiant. It's good to be with you guys this morning. We're in the middle of a series on ag that Travis started a few weeks ago. And I wanted to start by asking you guys a question. Have you ever heard this before? Don't pray for patience, because God will give you something to be patient about. Okay? So I can tell by your reaction that you guys have heard this before. I'm glad it's not just me. So in my 20s, I heard this a lot. And I don't know how this saying started. I mean, maybe it started off as a joke and then it became real, because it was very real for my friends and I. At the college I went to, I mean, we would warn each other not to pray for patience. This was a truism, like, we don't pray for patience. We all know what happens when you pray for patience. And I took it very seriously. Never prayed for patience one time in all my 20s. And looking back, I thought, man, we thought we had found a loophole. Like, if I can just not pray for patience, then God will be obligated to not give me additional trials that will then give me more patience. So we thought we had found this divine loophole that would guarantee an easier life. And by the time I was about 30, I looked back and I thought, man, this is not working. My life is not easier at all. I did not spare myself any hardship by not praying for patience. So I don't think that was the best idea. The truth is that we're going to have to wait in this life. We're going to have to wait. We're going to need patience. The real question is, how are you going to wait? Are you going to wait with patience and the way the Lord wants you to wait? Or are you going to wait with impatience, without character? Like I said, we're in this series called My Job Depends on Ag. And one of the questions that Travis has been asking is our spiritual life, is spiritual growth more like a factory or more like a farm? You know, is it more like Amazon Prime, or is it more like agriculture, the slow and steady growth of crops? Like, which is it more like? And the answer is obvious. And that's why we're doing this series on ag. And so I wanted to look at this passage that Micah read for us again. In the first couple verses, James, he encourages us to be patient and stand firm. I'll read it again. He says this: "Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near." I love this. I love that he encourages us to be patient, and of all the occupations, of all the examples he could have drawn from, he tells us to look to the farmer. He says, yeah, take a page out of the farmer's book. Learn from the farmer and be patient like the farmer. And so I was thinking about this, well, what did that look like for a farmer back then? You know, a first century farmer in Israel or one of the surrounding nations, like what did that look like for one of those farmers to be patient? And I found this in a commentary on James, and I think it helps a little bit with what it looked like. This is Peter Davids, and he says, for the Palestinian farmer, the crops were literally his life. After the sowing, he waited for the spring or the later rains, which is March through April, to ripen the crop. All this time, his food supplies were getting lower. It was not uncommon for food to be rationed and the children to be crying from hunger during the month or two before harvest. But with his life in his hands, he had to wait for conditions outside his control. And I thought that brought it to life a little bit. I don't know all of the 21st century farming techniques, and so I'm just going to stay away from that because I'm not the best person to speak into that. But this is what James was referring to when he was telling us to emulate the patience of the farmer. He's talking about the farmer who, after the sowing process, there's the waiting process, and in those last few months before the harvest, things would get really tight. Things would get really difficult where they were literally waiting for their livelihood. They were waiting for their survival, for the crops to come about. And so this is the kind of patience that James is talking about, not something passive, not just sitting around watching TV, but like you're watching, you're waiting, and all of your life, all of your survival depends on what God, or in the farmer's mind, nature running its course, but ultimately what God will do or not do. This is the kind of waiting that we're encouraged to do. What makes this hard, and even the last part of that quote, the farmer's waiting for conditions outside his control, that's really the crux of why we hate waiting. I don't know anyone who likes waiting. I don't like waiting. I was with my family last night and a family friend, and family friend Wumi was asking what I'm preaching on, and I'm like, oh, waiting and patience. She's like, hate that. And I'm like, so does everyone. Like, that's everyone's response. Like, no one's like, I love to wait. Yes, give me an extra hour in line or whatever. And it's the control aspect. Like, we lose control when we're waiting. Whether it's a serious kind of waiting like the farmer, or it's something more trivial like we encounter every single day, like our screen is buffering, or the line is longer than we want. Like, we're out of control. We just want things to be in our control. An author, Mark Vrogup, wrote a whole book on waiting, and he says this. He says, underneath our disdain for waiting is our longing for control. I thought that diagnosed it pretty well. So what's the deal? If you've read through the Bible, what's the deal with all of the waiting passages? There's so many. Like, God seems to really care about this. There's constantly encouragements and verses about waiting. So here's a small little sample. There's way more than this, but Psalm 27, verse 14 in the ESV says this: wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. So he says it twice. Like, if you didn't get it the first time, he says it again. No, I'm saying wait for the Lord. And then secondly, Psalm 37, verse 7, he says, be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Kind of makes it even harder that wait, not just wait, but wait patiently for him. And then Lamentations, everyone's favorite book, says, the Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. And most of us would disagree with that last line. Like, no, this is not good. Waiting is not a good thing. It's bad, usually. And then this is my favorite one, the last one, Psalm 40, verse 1. I have the MSG version. That's the Message. The way Eugene Peterson translates it is, I waited and waited and waited for God. And I thought, that's real. That's the way it feels a lot of times. So why so much waiting? Why so many encouragements to wait, besides the fact that we're naturally bad at it? But what happens? Why does God care? I think a few things here. One is that, and this is obvious, but waiting teaches us to not be spoiled. How many of you guys remember Veruca Salt? Okay, what does she say? I want it now. Yes, exactly. And so this is the opposite of the patient attitude. It's the Veruca Salt syndrome. I want it now, Daddy, I want it now. This is the opposite of patience. And this is what we turn into if we never have to wait. Imagine the child who never has to wait for anything. That is what they turn into. And so it might be helpful to just picture the opposite of the person who never waits. It's Veruca Salt. That's where we're at. And I just thought that, in a society that's becoming more and more technological and is trying to get faster and faster in every way, and in some ways we appreciate that, but in a lot of ways we are, as a society, turning more into Veruca Salt. Like every little bit of waiting just agitates us and aggravates us. Secondly, waiting in the Bible teaches us to look to God. So this is a way that waiting in the Bible is different than just how we normally use the word waiting. Usually when we're talking about waiting, we're talking about waiting for something. I waited for somebody to call me back. I waited for the food to be ready. But in the Bible, it's always waiting on God. Why is that? Well, because from the Bible's perspective, anything that's worth having is ultimately from the hand of God. Every good and perfect gift is from God, and God's sovereign. And so if we're waiting on something that we actually need, then we are, in fact, waiting on the Lord. The only kind of waiting that matters is waiting on the Lord. And so waiting, from God's perspective, it teaches us to lift our eyes to the one who really is in control, the one who is in charge of everything. So instead of just keeping our eyes on that thing that we want now, we lift our eyes and we go, God, you're the one in control. I'm actually waiting on you. And it changes our heart posture. It puts it into a place of prayer. Isaiah 40, verse 31, this is a famous passage about waiting, one that I love. Isaiah 40, verse 31 says, "But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." And this is, so in the poetry of Isaiah, this is a really powerful picture of the promises that come to those who don't just wait for stuff or things, but who actually wait on the Lord. You're going to be strengthened on the inside. You're going to rise up on the wings of eagles. You're going to run. I mean, these are all pictures of being restored and revived and renewed on the inside. And who doesn't want that? As we enter into a new year in 2026, who doesn't want these pictures from Isaiah, the rising up on the wings of eagles, running and not growing weary, just being alive on the inside? Who doesn't want that for 2026? So to wait on God means to remember his good character when we're tempted to doubt it. Because what happens when you're actually waiting for a long time? The enemy comes in and he says, see, God's not good. See, God's distant. He doesn't care. But when you're waiting on the Lord, you go, no. He cares. He keeps his promises. He's faithful. Okay, lastly, what does waiting do? It develops patience and Christ-like character within us. So what is patience? Patience, and this is my definition, patience is simply the ability to wait for God with a heart of peace and hopefulness. I know it's like way easier said than done, right? Simply waiting with a heart of peace and hopefulness. So while I was reading all these passages on waiting and books on waiting this week, I realized that I ran out of one of my medicines that I take for the chronic Lyme disease. It's like this herbal medicine that I can't get on Amazon, which I hate it. Whenever I can't get something with Amazon Prime, I got to order it from the doctor. So I order it, and a day goes by, and I realize I haven't gotten a receipt in my email yet. I'm like, what's going on here? So I call again the next day, and I'm like, hey, did you guys get a chance to process that order? And the secretary, she goes, I don't think so. I go, oh, when will you do that? She said it like as if it was the most normal thing to have not processed my order. I was like, oh, when do you think you will process the order that I placed yesterday on the phone with you? She's like, I don't know. Let me check. Can you hold? I was like, sure. I've been holding since yesterday, but I will hold more. And so I'm like on the phone, and she comes back and she goes, you know what? We don't have it. I go, oh, that's cool. I have to call back, and I didn't say that part, but I was like, oh, I have to call back and find this out. I was like, when will you guys have it? And she goes, I don't know. We'll order it, and then it will get to us, and then we'll ship it out to you. So probably like next week sometime. It's like, okay, thank you. Hung up, ordered the same thing from another doctor somewhere else. So now I have 2 orders that are coming, whichever one comes first. But this is a picture of us waiting. We hate it, and I'm gonna be okay. Like my medicine's gonna get here on time, and it's gonna be all right. But really, it was just a week. But for us these days, like, man, if it doesn't get here in 2 days on Prime, like, you're dead to me. Like, don't look at me. That was my attitude towards this doctor's office. Like, who do you guys think you are? Like, not processing my order in less than 24 hours? I was very offended. So we need to learn from the farmer. Here's another passage. 2 Timothy 2, 3-6. Paul says this. He says, join with me in suffering like a good soldier of Christ Jesus. No one serving as a soldier gets entangled in civilian affairs, but rather tries to please his commanding officer. Similarly, anyone who competes as an athlete does not receive the victor's crown, except by competing according to the rules. The hardworking farmer should be the first to receive a share of the crops. So Paul points us to 3 occupations, okay? And as we're tracking, he might be like, okay, first, look at the soldier. Sacrifices his life. He's dedicated. And we're like, yeah, Veterans Day, soldiers, like, we're into this. Like, this is very inspiring. And he's like, okay, next one on the list, athletes. We're like, for sure, athletes. We love athletes. Man, they're so good at what they do. Like, man, they are just like the finest human specimens of strength and agility. Like, we're into this, Paul. And he's like, okay, next one on the list. Get ready. This is the climax, okay? He's like, look to the farmer. And we're like, oh, that's cool. The farmer. That's not quite as inspiring to watch the farmer. Last night I said we were at dinner, we were at Planning Mill. In the middle of our meal, the whole place just erupts. Everyone's just yelling and cheering. I'm like, what is going on? We look in the TV, somebody just scored a touchdown. They just broken through, scored a touchdown. It was awesome, gave us some excitement. I was just thinking, what if it was like live action of a farmer on the field? Like, we're at Planning Meal, the farmer walks out, the announcer's like, he's up, it's early morning. What is that? Is that a crop? Is that a weed or is that a crop? Is that the first bud? We're going in for a close-up. It goes for the close-up. The farmer walks over. It's the first crop of the harvest. The Planning Mill goes wild. Yeah, woo! It's not going to happen, right? When's the last time a farmer was on the cover of GQ? Never. I Googled it. Never. Okay? When was the last time a farmer was on the cover of Time magazine? 1978. I Googled that too. It's been almost 60 years. I think it's time. What do you guys think? Central Valley farmer on the cover of Time. Come on. So the point is not to undermine the value of the soldier, the athlete. It's that as a society now, we just kind of put farmers in the back corner. They're just like, yeah, just like get us our food so it can come to Save Mart and we can buy it. Like, we don't really care about the process anymore because the process isn't as exciting. It's not as fast. We're not going to cheer for it in the middle of our dinner. But in Paul's mind, he ends with it. I just love that. Like, that in Paul's mind, this is the climax of it's not just waiting, it's working. It's both. The farmer is a hard worker and he's a hard waiter. And those two things are really hard to come by. We have more examples of people who will work hard, and that's so valuable. But what about the person who will work hard when it's time to work hard and then knows how to wait when it's time to wait? That takes spiritual maturity. And that's why he ends with the farmer, because we need that kind of mindset. Now, just to drive this home, because I know some of us are still like, I still don't think that patience is a virtue. I still think that waiting is lame, and I want to get rid of it as much as possible. I want to say one more thing. 1 Corinthians 13, it's the famous passage on love in the Bible. And I just want to read it, because I think there might be a couple things that we haven't caught before. 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7 says, love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Now, I want us to notice that it ends with this picture of perseverance. I mean, what is perseverance? The ability to wait, the ability to have patience with hope and faith. And then how does the passage start? Love is patient. And so the first and last descriptors of true love, according to the most famous passage on love, is patience related. And so what I want to say is that if you don't know how to have patience, you don't know how to love. We value love, but we don't value patience. But the two are related in God's mind. Remember, the love of the Bible is not the sentimental, sappy love of the movies, but it's something a lot deeper, a lot more long-lasting, a lot more gritty. And it involves patience necessarily. Patience is the ability to slow down. This is something that John Mark Comer writes about in the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which is a book I really recommend. But he says this about hurry and about just the speed at which we live our lives. He says this: hurry and love are incompatible. All my worst moments as a father, a husband, and a pastor, even as a human being, are when I'm in a hurry. And I appreciate that connection, because we don't often think of hurry as the enemy, but often, very often, hurry is the enemy. And we can't love because we're moving too fast. It's impossible to love when we're always moving fast. That's a famous quote from the psychologist Carl Jung, actually. He says that hurry is not of the devil, hurry is the devil. And that's just a pretty in-your-face, helpful comment about the need to slow down. If we want to truly love, if we want to truly wait the way the Lord wants us to, we need to slow down. I want to read this last passage here. Mark 4:26-29. This is we started with James, with the ag metaphors, started with James, continued to Paul, and now we're with Jesus. And this is what Jesus says. He says, "This is what the kingdom of God is like. A man scatters seed on the ground night and day. Whether he sleeps or gets up, the seed sprouts and grows, though he does not know how. All by itself, the soil produces grain. First the stalk, then the head, then the full kernel in the head. As soon as the grain is ripe, he puts the sickle to it because the harvest has come." End of story. And Jesus is just so funny, because sometimes I just think, what if you were there listening to this? Like, he tells this story, a farmer goes out, sows the seed, crops comes up. All right, that's all, guys. See you later. Like, wow, cool story. Thank you. That was boring. Does that apply to our lives at all? And I taught a class in the parables a couple years ago, and what we found was that these simple stories have layers of meaning, just depth of revelation, so much to it. And so there's so much we could say about this. It's a story about the mystery and the invisibility of God's work, that what God's doing is often underneath the soil and invisible to the human eye, but it's happening. It's a story about man's partnership with God, that we do our part, but then God does what only he can do. But the part I wanted to point out is that this is also a story about how kingdom expansion is usually mundane and slow. Usually. We always love the day of Pentecost type moments, right? Where there's the suddenly, where God breaks in, the prayer's answered, the Spirit's poured out. I love that. I want more of that. But most of the time, the kingdom of God is working through small acts of obedience. You spending time with Jesus every day. Maybe you don't feel it. You sharing your testimony with a friend. You listening to your kids or watching them for the 20th time as they jump on the trampoline, like these little acts of love and obedience. This is how the kingdom grows most of the time. Okay, so what does this look like? I want to end with, what does this look like in real life, if it's not already clear? I think it looks like three things. And the first one is that mostly it just looks like a perspective shift. And you've already probably gathered that so far this morning. But mostly it looks like a perspective shift. Like maybe the waiting that I dread and try to avoid all the time, maybe it's actually beneficial. What if my perspective shifted? And what if I looked at all of these waiting moments as patience practice? Ways that my heart can grow in love. Ways that I can slow down and connect with God and people more. What if that's how I started looking at all of these slow moments? This is exactly what James says at the beginning of his book. He says, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." You can't count it all joy unless you know that these times of waiting are doing something. But when you know that, you can. You can go, okay, praise God. You're doing something awesome on the inside. The second thing is we can pray for patience. There's no loophole. Let's just do it. I mean, come on, we're not going to avoid any trials. It didn't work, okay? I'm exhibit letter A of the person who it didn't work for. So if you're going to have the suffering and the trials anyway, then we might as well pray for patience, because that's what we want and that's what we need. And then the last thing, we can practice something that some authors have started to call slowing. Okay? Before you groan at this too, this is not like the sloth on Zootopia. Okay, this is not like talk slower, be annoying when you're driving in front of somebody, that's not what slowing is. This is how John Ortberg defines slowing. He says, slowing is cultivating patience by deliberately choosing to place ourselves in positions where we simply have to wait. Okay, well, here's some examples of that. I got real excited about this week. I haven't been doing very good at it, but here's some examples. When you're driving, instead of, which is what I normally do, like, I get off on the Acres freeway, and then I come all the way down to Central Visalia. I mean, it's like a 3-minute drive on the freeway, if that. I switch lanes like 4 times, like getting around people, and then I just make it in time to get off on the Central Visalia exit. Okay, what if, this is revolutionary, what if we stayed in one lane? Okay? What if we drove the speed limit? Okay, stay with me, okay? Same lane, speed limit, okay? And then with all that extra energy we usually use, like darting around, what if we prayed? What if we just slowed down a little bit and put our thoughts on God? It's just a thought, okay? Here's another one. Here's another one, practice of slowing. How about listening without a phone in your hand, okay? So how often do we all experience this and do this, okay? You're talking to somebody, you go, uh-huh, yeah. What? Yeah, totally. I know, right? Now, when that happens, do you feel loved by that person? Do you feel valued? But that's normal, right? Can you imagine Jesus doing that? Can you imagine Jesus walking the earth and being like, what was that, Peter? Oh my gosh, the Pharisees are texting me right now, like, I know, yeah, we'll be there in a second. Okay. No, Jesus is not gonna do that. Listening. This requires us to slow down, to actually listen to somebody, to actually hear them out. It requires the phone being away, eye contact, slowing down, you're connecting with somebody. This quote from David Augsburger, I think it's been quoted here from the stage before, but I just want to quote it again because I love it. It says, being heard is, sorry, I skipped one, Micah. The David Augsburger quote, it says, being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they are almost indistinguishable. Oh well, you guys get the point. Being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they're almost indistinguishable. The more you listen, the more you're actually loving. Okay, here's a last example of slowing, is to just take wholesale breaks from your phone. Like just phone in the other room for hours at a time. I mean, as much as possible, like as much as you can physically handle until your hand starts shaking, and you need to grab it. But just beware that almost everyone I know, including myself, is more addicted to having their phone on them at all times than they realize. And the average person, when you say this, like take a break from your phone, is like, done. Like, yeah, I'll do that tomorrow, But as soon as they do it, and the longer they do it, they realize, no, I need to check this. I need to look at this. Like, so we all underestimate the digital addiction that we're going through. And that's why we're going to go on a digital fast as a church in a couple months. So yeah, get excited. So we'll talk more about that, but that's going to be an awesome opportunity to slow down, to learn how to love and to develop patience, all the things. Okay, last thing, because I didn't want to end this as much as I love it. I didn't want to end this on just like tips and tricks. I wanted to end with our gaze upon Jesus, the patient one, because the gospel is not try harder. The gospel is that Jesus has made a way for us so we can live a supernatural life and we can live a grace-filled life. And if you remember the very first verse that we started with, what did it say? James 5 verse 7 says this, be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. Here's the good news. For the believer in Jesus, waiting never lasts forever. It doesn't last forever. Jesus comes. He comes. Sometimes he comes in this life and it's awesome. He answers the prayer. He breaks through. He brings the healing. And that's what we want. But even if he doesn't, if it's one of those situations that just stretch on, then he will still return and make everything right. Either way, the waiting doesn't last forever. And so here's the thing. Jesus was the ultimate farmer. He was the ultimate seed sower, the truth bringer, the one who was fully God, and he became a human and patiently suffered for 33 years on this life for our sake. Especially in his last few hours on the cross, he patiently suffered on the cross so we could be forgiven for all of our bad waiting, for all of our lack of patience. We could be forgiven of that, and then he would go on to rise from the dead and pour out the Spirit so we could live new lives. So we could actually have the fruit of the Spirit, which includes patience. This is the good news, and the waiting won't last forever. Jesus will come. So let's stand together. We're going to take communion, and we're going to have a prayer team. In communion, we're going to celebrate what Jesus, the patient one, did for us on our behalf. And if you are feeling this morning and feel like, man, I need patience, I need perseverance for what I'm dealing with, then get prayer. Ask for prayer. We're going to have a prayer team who would love to minister to you and pray with you. So God, we look to you this morning. We ask for you to come and meet us today, right where we're at. And we praise you, Lord, that our waiting is meaningful to you and that it counts with you. And we just ask you to help us. In your name, Jesus, amen.
Thanks for listening. We want to be a resource for you as you walk with Jesus. So please connect with us at radiantvisalia.com. Until next time.
There is a heavenly city that I'm compelled to find. Though I love the flowers and trees and the smell of the grinding sea and all the beautiful things here in life. And I